However, where people get stuck is that they can't admit that I went to medical school. I didn't take courses in bookkeeping. I have no experience in marketing. I'm not a CPA. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a biller. I didn't go to school for those things. There are people that literally went to school for these things. Let them do their job.
You got to hold yourself accountable. You got to have the discipline. You got to have a team of people that know what they're doing. And you have to be humble enough to listen to them. Even when you're the boss, you have to be able, okay, that they're right. I'm hearing it, acting on it. Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Sarah Neitzel. She's a podiatrist and owns Peninsula Podiatry, Pure Peninsula Spa, and Visionary Practice Solutions. She's a longtime client of mine, and I honestly consider her a good friend too. So welcome. Why don't you tell us a few words to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. So I'm a podiatric physician. I went to school in Chicago, graduated residency in 2015. I've always wanted to have my own practice, so I got started in that pretty much right out the gate. And I started a medically safe nail spa as a second business. That was in 2020. And then a couple of years ago, I started Visionary Practice Solutions, which is a coaching for private practice business side of things, because none of us get any real actual business training in med school. So yeah, that's me from then till now.
All right. And I'm Airto Zamorano. I'm the co-founder of Numana Medical and Numana Digital. We work with doctors like Sarah, help them grow and manage their practices. Before launching my companies in 2017, I was a CEO of a multi-specialty medical practice. Today, Sarah and I have decided to share our experience with others. We want to talk about how she launched her practice, launched a medically safe nail salon that complements her practice, and how she has continued to grow both of these businesses and how she plans to continue growing from there.
Yeah.
So let's get into it.
I'm excited.
All right. Well, let's to begin. Why don't you tell us what you were doing before you launched your own practice?
Like before med school or just before launching?
Yeah, before going out on your own. What led you there?
Yeah, I actually pretty well always knew that I wanted to go out on my own in some form. I was lucky enough to have a residency program that exposed us to hospital-based medicine, private practice, ambulatory care, wound care centers. So I got a little bit of everything and then got to decide really what was going to be the best fit for me. At the time, I would say that, I was coming into residency and leaving residency when there were a lot more private practices out there. And, these were guys that had been practicing since the 70s and 80s, which was kind of seen as the heyday of private practice. So, for them, they were like, this is the best one ever. And I mean, it definitely is the best fit for me, but it was not as easy as everybody made it out to seem.
So you knew you wanted to where you wanted to be eventually, but what made you finally take the leap? What gave you the confidence or?
I think I've always been kind of a just go out and do it yourself kind of person. I really was more comfortable with the idea of being the decision maker and making my own decisions. So it really wasn't a huge question for me when I decided to really go out on my own. My last year of residency, I knew where I wanted to practice. Actually, truth be told, I didn't. I was trying to pick between Colorado, which is where you're at, and Washington, which is where I'm at. And I couldn't make a decision. So that was the year that the Broncos and the Seahawks went to the Super Bowl. So I decided whoever won the Super Bowl is where I was going to go live. And it worked out for me because I met my husband out here. So yeah, I mean, that was literally why I decided to come out to Washington. But I took my, the beginning of my third year and I went ahead and came out to the state conference out here and started kind of looking for private practice docs that maybe wanted to take on an associate or were looking for some kind of office sharing type of deal. And I found one. I found somebody who, really thought it would be better if we kind of had our own separate practices, but we shared an office space, we shared employees, we shared a lot of, kind of the business knowledge, and behind the scenes. And I learned a lot from that. But I started all my own LLC and everything while I was still living in Chicago for Washington. all while like taking the board exams and all the other fun stuff. So it wasn't much of a decision. It was more like, okay, where do I want to go do this? And then how, right? Which is the part nobody tells you. So that's a big part of what I help people with now.
So what were the immediate obstacles to launching your practice? How'd you overcome them?
You know, I'll say it's probably the same obstacle that I still deal with now. And I think most people deal with, which is obscurity. Like nobody knows who you are when you first come out into private practice. So, you know, you spend probably the first couple of years, maybe 3 years really in your area, you know, getting yourself out there, making sure people recognize your name. They're starting to recognize the brand. You know, but even once you get past that part of it and you get known in your community as somebody as a referral source, then like every single time you go to launch something new or you think about a new service line that you want to launch, you have the exact same problem again. It's like, it's always the obscurity of being unknown in your area. So I think that was probably one of the biggest challenges was how do you get patients in the door when nobody knows you're even here? And that's where I had to start looking at like, okay, how do I make sure everybody knows I'm here? You know, other physicians for referrals, you know, do I try to do web marketing? Do I do Google ads? Or do I just do all of them? So a lot of my first year was spent trying to figure out all that stuff on my own because everybody went, oh yeah, you can totally do it on your own. It'll be fine. And I mean, it was okay, but it wasn't as good as it could have been. So, so I think that was probably the biggest like struggle to start and why it took so long.
Yeah. I think that's pretty common, right? I think no matter what your business, it's you got to make a name for yourself, and you know why. Yeah, that's an interesting thing for me. Where we tell people like, look, you're going to be the new kid on the block, you know, and you got to think there's people who've been doing this 20 years in the market. Mm-hmm. They've earned a place. Like you shouldn't be able just to walk in, and just take whatever you want. And when you're 20 years in business, you don't want the new guy to do that either.
No,
so it's
right?
Like,
yes.
So it works that way for a reason. But that is the hard part, right?
Yeah.
So, and then tell me like, how did you get your first patients? Like what did you do for that specific thing that is so hard?
I mean, that was a while ago. I'm trying to think back on what I did specifically. I had 2 years from 2015 to 2017 where I was sharing the office space with the other person. So there was already, you know, patients that were calling in. And so there were some patients that when they were offered, hey, do you want to see our newer doctor? Because she can get you in sooner. You know, that did kind of start to fill my schedule. I know we'll talk about it later, but like I eventually moved locations and went like completely on my own in 2017. So I know I had a few patients come over from that first couple of years, but it wasn't very many because anytime you move locations, you're going to lose people. Even if it's, you know, just one town over, which is what I did. But I think there was a lot of trying to figure out what it was I could offer and make sure that like, what was it that made me different that I could offer that was going to be appealing to patients? And I was competing with 3 other practices that are all like 20, 25 years in the business, just like you said. So I'm totally the new kid on the block. Nobody knows I exist. And I realized the big problem that everybody else had is their wait time to get into appointments. So, you know, these 3 practices were booked up. It was taking a month, 2 months to get into them. So I literally started Google ads saying like, hey, I can take same day appointments. Hey, I can get you in within a week. And that did start to get people in. And it grew slow, but that was probably the big thing that differentiated me at the time because I took that approach everybody typically, you know, takes when they first get out. And I was like, I'm going to do everything from A to Z in my specialty. Like, I'm not going to turn anybody away. And while I understand that, it's definitely changed over the years. And I'm not sure that I think that's necessarily the right approach. Like that's something I might have done a little bit differently, but it got me some volume to start. So,
well, that's interesting. In my business, it was take whatever comes in, right? You want to keep yourself busy. I tend to lean toward open the floodgates. And as you get the volume, you can start to decide what you want to not do and not take over time. But also from a lot of the doctors we've worked with, when I was hiring doctors and trying to get new doctors busy. Same day appointments were huge. Night and evening, night and weekend appointments were huge. Things that gave immediate access could start to build some momentum for you.
Yeah.
So I think that's your experience is consistent with what I've seen.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, if you're going open a new practice, if you're an associate joining, it's just such a good way to just get things moving. People get to know you. Referral sources will come about because you could get them in sooner. You would communicate better.
Right.
Back. I mean, there's all these different things. So I think I'm a pretty big fan of opening the floodgates, rolling up your sleeves, being willing to do a little extra, with the idea that long term it's going to create momentum where you can then chill out your schedule. You can decide, what you're going to do, what you're not going to do. So,
yeah. I mean, I think one of the big things I did for my referral sources was I made sure to send the notes after each visit. Even if it was just, a follow-up, I sent the note and I had a little cover letter that went out to them via fax that was like, hey, thanks for making me part of the treatment team. This is what I do. These are the hours I'm open. Let us know how we can make this easier for a referral for you. And I do think that helped. That did start, I did start getting about 4 or 5 core people that were sending people over. Plus, the big thing is you got to make your patients happy. So if you make those patients happy, that makes that referral doc look good, right? They're going to want to refer to you because their patients are coming back going, man, this doctor was amazing. So focus on your patient experiences that they're having in the office. Try to really perfect that. I mean, I think, to start, if you're just really wanting to make sure you have the volume and you want that security, open up the floodgates for everybody. But definitely try new things too. I mean, I know I opened late Wednesday nights. I had the same thought. I was like, late nights for those people that are working, and then I'll do a Saturday morning. I never had a single person in this area book for Saturday morning. So Wednesday nights were popular, right? So I just started later Wednesday and ran into the evening, but Saturdays, nobody ever booked. And I was living 40 minutes away. So I was like, well, not doing Saturdays anymore. So, some stuff's going to work, some stuff won't. So we just, I think trialing a few things to see what's going to work in your area is important too.
Yeah. An interesting thing I learned was the night appointments. A lot of those folks are working a little more focused on getting care and moving on. And then, it was a different population from who came during the day.
Yes.
I mean, you might have the geriatrics for the day, have a little more time to kill, want to chat. The other group wasn't quite like that. So but this is the stuff you got to do because each market, you're going to figure out where your spot is. And being available quicker was a huge differentiator. Yeah. So that's a good way to get your foot in the door.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So we'll talk in a second. I want to get into where you and I met. And but where you had a pretty good start for yourself, had a good idea of where you're headed. In that initial launch phase, that startup phase, any other things you look back and think you might do a little different?
Not really. I mean, I did take a side gig doing a couple half days a week at a wound care center in the area. Actually, it was not really in the area. I had to drive to do it. But that at least brought a little more consistent income in so that I could pay my bills while I built the practice. Make sure anybody who does that, you do not sign a non-compete. Actually, I don't even know if those are really enforceable anymore, but that was a big part for me is I was not going to sign that. So it's no, I'm literally doing this while I build. So that was helpful to go do something else for a little bit, just a couple days a week. But, when I finally hit the point of my office was full those days of the week, there was a place where I had to make a decision about whether I was going to fully commit and kind of give up that more guaranteed income to full commit to my practice. And that was a little bit of a hard place to be, but it made sense. I think I dropped wound care in 2019. I think you and I talked about that a lot. It was, you were like, when are you going to drop this and start committing? And I'm like, I don't know. So it was a hard decision, but I mean, once I had kind of met you, that really opened my eyes to I need to actually hire people that know what they're doing in these spaces. I had an idea, I educated myself a little bit. I, had to Google search what SEO was a few years before I met you. But once I at least I had an idea, but once we brought you guys on board, I was like, oh, oh, I need to like hire a team. Like, I shouldn't be doing all of this on my own.
Well, yeah, I mean, so yeah, that first phase, you and I met. We went through an assessment of your brand.
Yeah.
We wanted to look at your competition, the market that you were trying to be competitive in, and then we could figure out, you need what you need for your website, your content. Yep. We helped, identify you weren't visible from a local perspective. Nope. And then, figuring out how even social media, like what was the appropriate level of social media to approach. Mm-hmm. And this is what I'd figured out when we were trying to expand our offices back before I started my business. And I started to understand Google was so important, right? And this is what you and I talked about, is like, it's people look online to find healthcare solutions a lot more now than ever. Mm-hmm. Groups that have been relying on referrals, other sources, when done correctly, they start to see that Google will be your number one source, whether it's paid ads or SEO. But also the reputation side. We see things like people will get referred to a doctor and then look online and see either you got bad reviews or another doctor may look better with better reviews or something, right? So they are looking there.
Yeah.
And then I think you and I had a pretty good conversation about just how patients look at an online ranking on Google as a hierarchical ranking. Like the doctor at the top is the best doctor, right? They're there for a reason.
Right.
So yeah, I remember those conversations, and I think you had a lot of good instincts. You knew what you needed to be doing. You knew what needed to be done in a lot of ways. I think where we came in was you were ready to start getting some help from people with experience, and you had to invest in your growth. So that was our first phase. We were able to pretty quickly start working, mostly because you were ready. You knew something needed to be done, and you wanted to make sure someone knew what that was. But it was, really you were at that point to invest in that, and you trusted the process.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, and I think one of the things that was cool for you guys was like, and I had kind of signed up with a couple short-term contracts with some different marketing groups, and sometimes it was like a machine or a product or something that you'd buy, and they're, talking up how they're going to, provide you with all this sales help. They never do. Like, I'm not trying to be offensive to them, but like, they never do any of that. You buy the machine and then they're like, bye. Yeah. But you guys actually had experience with like that higher level management of a serious medical practice. So, for somebody in medicine, I could hire a marketing team, but if they don't really understand what my like final goals are and like where I want to get to and how to make that brand happen, it's not as valuable. So that's the reason we've been doing this now for 5-6 years, something like that. So it definitely made a big difference for me. I wanted to know that somebody like understood where I was wanting to go with it, understood what I was doing and the challenges that practices face. And then also convinced me to start asking for reviews, because that was probably one of the biggest things that I was not doing. Like, I was not comfortable doing that at all.
Yeah, very, very few are.
Yeah, no, I've noticed that. It's like, just ask. And God, it's hard to get through the first few, but once you do, it gets a lot easier.
Well, I mean, very few doctors are interested in doing that. It's abnormal. The year I got in the medical industry, to me, it seemed like it was when the tides were turning. Mm-hmm. But marketing, because a lot of doctors I talked to, 14 years ago or something now, they didn't have to market right then like you do today. Yeah. And so things like getting reviews is like weird. Right. Right. It's uncomfortable. Yeah. But you kind of have to accept the reality of the situation. And as I told you, I'm like, blame your marketing guy. Just I don't want to ask, but he won't leave me alone.
Ask, but they won't stop asking. Yeah.
Yeah. Or someone on your team does it, right? But unfortunately, if you don't do it, it has a real impact.
Yeah.
So
it does.
It's a necessary evil.
It does. Yeah. I think the whole like go out and hang your shingle and they will come is just no longer a thing. And then at the tail end of residency, that was kind of still what we were getting told, was like, oh yeah, just go put your shingle out. You'll get people coming in the door. And it's like, then you get out there and you're like, so nobody's here. This is not Field of Dreams. Like, what happened? So you do have to advertise online, and you do have to have a presence, and it's It's different. It's just different.
Well, you and I have talked about this many times. Hanging your shingle in of itself, right, is not going to do it. And I think especially a lot of doctors, because you went through so much to become a doctor, it's somewhat reasonable to think like, well, yeah, I'll just open my doors. People need help.
Yeah.
The first thing you got to accept is the odds are heavily against you. Most people, like well over 90% of businesses will fail.
Yeah.
I think the ones who succeed, the overwhelming majority of those won't thrive
Right.
the way people would hope.
Right.
And in my opinion, though, if you find the right system, you do the right things, there is a formula. This is why serial entrepreneurs are successful.
Yep.
Repetitively.
Yep.
Then I do think your chance of success is very high.
Yes.
But the problem is the reason all those other people fail or just don't thrive is because they're not doing things the right way. They're not doing what's proven.
Nope.
Whether it's marketing or operations, HR. So I think you've been very good at educating yourself on what you need to know. You quickly identified, look, you can only do so much, so you're better off managing a relationship versus trying to do it all yourself.
Yeah.
If you cut corners on those things, you won't get the results, right?
Nope.
So that's the bottom line. And that first phase this was August 2019. I think that's what went well, right? I think things went really smooth, actually.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff just kind of hit as prescribed, and that I wish that was always the case, not
right.
always, but yours was pretty smooth. Your competition was, bigger, more established, but it wasn't the toughest assignment to start to deconstruct what they're doing and make sure you were doing it better.
Right.
But I think the real victory was that you were a good business person, you had a good business mind. You understood the assignment, what you needed to do, what you needed us to do. So I didn't feel like there were too many hiccups there. I think it was you fell right into a pretty well established strategy. That we built on a lot of experience. So so let's talk about the next phase. What happened now? Traffic's increasing. You're getting more appointments. What was going on at that point? What were your hours like?
I mean, my hours were a little ridiculous. It really, really started growing, and it grew at. We used to keep a graph in the back, my single staff member and I, because it was like a way to have both of us invested in seeing everything grow, and we based it on how many new patients per month and per week are we getting, and it just exponentially shot up. Again, my focus was more on making sure those patients had an amazing experience in the office, because that referral from another friend really became hands down the best way to get a patient. Those patients are coming in from a trusted source, right? They're already coming in from a family member. They're already coming in from a friend. So they already have it in their mind that they're going to have a good experience. So it's a lot less difficulty in getting them to book. Referral from a physician was still good. We were still doing all of the letters and the notes back, and those were good, but it's also they have a level of trust in their physician, but you're not their mom, right? So that, that physician's referral is still better than off the street, but it's not quite as good as a family or friend. And then you guys were really hitting for basically the cold audience. That was kind of the third component of it, where I don't really have the time or control over what people are thinking of me outside of this space, and when they search on Google, them finding me. So, we were tracking during that time, where these referrals were coming from. So, I would say we were probably at about, maybe 40% or so from, friends and family, because I was focused on their experience in office. I think probably 30 to 40% were coming in from you guys, from the online stuff that we were seeing, mostly Google. And we weren't doing much for Facebook or social media at that point. Plus, I'm just not big into that anyways. And then actually only about 10 to 20% consistently were coming in from referral sources, because that's just an area where, they're only going to refer if somebody needs you. So there's a lot of ifs that have to happen for that referral to come through. It was definitely growing. We were tracking everything. I was getting to be crazy busy and was trying to do my surgery days and clinic days. And I think I hit 5 days a week and which is so different than now. 5 days a week of, being in clinic and then like fitting surgeries in because I wasn't quite busy enough to have block time. And it was getting a little overwhelming. But I was kind of addicted to the growth part of it. Like this is when I started to have an inkling that I was like, I kind of like the business part of this a lot because this is really exciting to watch this grow. And I remember too, when I asked you, I was like, let's do Google ads. Like, how do we do that? I was so excited. You're like, you're crazy busy. Like, where are you going to fit these patients? I'm like, I don't know, but I want to do it. Like, it's like a whole thing.
I remember because I was like, my question was how booked out are you?
Yeah.
And then I remember it was a ways out, but I was like, there's no reason for Google ads yet.
Right.
Because you're going to bring people in that want to see you now and can't. So
right. Like you're just going to frustrate people. And that I appreciate it because I feel like other marketers would have just been like, you want to run Google ads? Great. I'll take your money. Let's run Google ads, but you were sitting here looking at the bigger picture. Like, no, your brand is going to suffer if you start taking on all these people and you can't fit them in. Like they're going to leave mad and it's going to affect your brand. So I liked that you guys had that bigger picture of like keeping me out of trouble basically.
Well, what I did recommend and we did go into next was actually you needed to start paying attention to the HR aspect of your growth because that's right. The other side of our business, we're like, well, let's talk about your team. Like how we handle this, who's answering phones, how do we protect your brand? How do we protect the patient experience? So we looked at staff training development. You had somebody that you started to nurture and you wanted to take on a bigger role. Talk to me about that a little bit. What was that like?
Yeah. My approach with staff, honestly, has always been, well, to rewind a little bit. When I was in college, I wanted to work as a veterinary technician. I thought I was going to go to vet school, right? Like that was hands down what I wanted to do. And the problem that I had was what in many professions people have is like, everybody wanted me to have the experience, but nobody wanted to be the one to give me that experience. And it was really somebody having to go out on that limb and be willing to train me that really made an impact for me. So I always knew as an employer, I wanted to be able to do that for people. And I feel like that actually kind of fosters more of a sense of loyalty and investment from your staff on the business as well, because they feel like you've put more into them, they're growing and developing, you're including them in how we're growing the business. And so it does create a better, I think, relationship and a lot more loyalty. Now they may not stick around, but most of my staff that I've had have been here for, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. The gal you're referring to actually was kind of in the same boat. She had a master's in healthcare administration, and she'd go in and everybody wants her to have 3 years of experience, but they don't want to give her the experience. So, really. She came to me very technically overqualified, right, to work my front desk position. But what I recognized with her, she was hungry. She wanted to get in there. She wanted to do it. And, I shared with her my goals for making this a huge practice with lots of employees. And I had a plan, but I was like, I know I'm not going to have the time if I'm doing this right to manage all those employees. So, if that's something you're interested in, I'm happy to start you here. And then let's build and invest into you to get you where you need so that you get that experience. And then we'll see what you want to do. 6 years later, she's still here. So, it paid off. But yeah, we started, I didn't know how to train a manager.
Well, think about that though. Think about her background and what she'd gone to school for. Yeah. And what you needed from us was okay, you've got the foundation from an education standpoint. Right. However,
yeah, I didn't know how to train her. You guys did.
So. Well, no, I'm regardless of that, I meant with that background education, it wasn't going to apply to what you needed right now at the level of expertise. Cause, and so for her, I thought from memory, she was very receptive. Because basically you said, look, somebody who's done what you want to do is going to spend time to coach you and I'm going to pay for it. Yep. And help you build a career. Yep. And then she probably sees that and goes, wow, this person's serious about their business growth. I'm in a great spot. I grow with them. They get bigger. I get to grow with them. And that happens a lot where we see the doctors, first hire,
Hmm.
gets moved up the ranks just by virtue of being there, and they
Being
like
there.
each
Yeah.
other.
Length of time.
Yeah, they don't
Not a good way to do it.
often. No, they don't often invest in the proper training,
Right.
or because more often than not, that person doesn't have, they
Yeah.
usually don't have your employee's background.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's a lot of pieces missing. So I think, obviously I'm biased, it's what we do, but
Yeah.
I think it's very important. Look, she's stuck around. She probably very, very skilled
Yep.
in her own right. And then now you've helped her not just grow with the business, but actually learn what should be happening, applied as the business grows.
Yep.
And that's, yeah, I think that went very well. And,
Yeah.
you're kind of on the same path a lot of doctors are, which is like, hey, it's the person I started with. But I
Right.
think you did it differently in that you made sure that the education and the investment was there. And I think it's paying
Yeah.
dividends, right?
Yeah.
And she's sticking around, and what's going to happen in the next 5+ years,
Right.
as it
Right.
gets bigger, she will be able to handle growth. She will be able to handle more, doctors, more staff, and
Yeah.
she'll understand
Yeah.
how it's all built. So,
Well, and I mean, it's not like I just got lucky too with like, oh, she was the
yeah,
first one I had. Like, I had 4 other employees in that position
yeah,
before her. And it was like
yeah,
that was the person that I saw, that drive, that push to get better, that how
yeah,
do I, she wanted the feedback. She was like, this is my goal. These are the things I want to do. And I was like, okay, like let's have a conversation about this. So, I mean, I think she worked for me for almost a year before I decided to go ahead and start really investing in her.
mhm,
Which also I think is a really cool way. Like, if you're early and starting off and you don't have a lot of capital to like just be like, I'm going to give raises, like, this is also another way that you can like benefit employees. It's a perk for them, if you're willing to invest in their education, stuff like that, courses, whatever it is. I think there's more ways to offer a benefit to an employee other than just like, okay, here's your 401k health insurance, here's a pay raise, stop bothering me. Like people, like, they can go anywhere and get that
yeah,
nowadays, right? Like, that's like a
yeah,
standard baseline at this point. But private practice, like, we don't have that kind of money just sitting around to be able to like offer our patients all
yeah,
those things. And a lot of times, if you're a single doc practice, you don't even have enough employees to offer health insurance as a,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, you're doing a personal plan with someone. So this was also kind of a nice thing, obviously upon talking with her, like, is this something you're interested in? Like, she jumped at the chance for this. So, and it was so great because like you guys had regular meetings scheduled with her, and I didn't have to, like, I would check in with her on like, so how'd it go? What'd you ask? And
yeah,
we'd check in, but I mean, she really had a chance to like, sit down and go through, okay, I have this come up and I don't know how to handle it. And, your person that was experienced was like, okay, here's how you need to handle this. And it was great. She's taken all
you
of that
know,
info and run with it.
one thing you did right was you understood where we fit into that, where she fit into that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think where some groups go wrong is they'll say, oh, well, this is my office manager, my administrator,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll just hand it off and they don't want to deal with it.
Right.
So now the student somehow also becomes the manager of the
Right.
situation.
Right.
And it's really hard. Whereas you stayed engaged.
Oh yeah.
We collaborated, because we're just there to coach, but
Mm-hmm.
we're not in charge of her.
Mm-hmm.
But you and I collaborated about, okay, listen, so you enforced the things that need to be done.
Yep.
And it kept a really healthy balance, right? Because we're not coming in to be in charge of anybody, making anyone's life harder.
Right.
And I think that'd be a tip I'd give if you're going to hire consultants. Where people go wrong a lot of time is they don't, the owner of the practice either A, doesn't subscribe to the plan, or because they don't pay attention, they don't enforce it. It's more of a suggestion. They can do it if they want. They just, or they just won't do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that. I mean, that's the problem, right? So what we've often said is, if you, we've explained this to some administrators at work. Look, if your boss felt this was worthwhile, that this is a worthy investment, we really should see it through. Because before you and I talked, there's probably quite a few hours where we were planned this out with the doctor, showed them why. So I think you did that very well, where you understood that you still had to have a certain level of engagement to make sure that the plan you invested in was followed. You supported what we said. We supported what you said. It was a team approach. You're the boss at the end of the day. And it went really well. She just really, I thought, very positive. So we enjoyed that.
And it doesn't have to be, I think, such a such a huge undertaking to like check in with how that's going for an employee either.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of, because it is a little bit of a mental mindset for the doctor owner, because right, we've got the side where we're seeing patients, and then we've got this whole business side, and we're trying to deal with an employee that's getting trained, and we're trying to, you know, on one hand, we want to hand that off as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I don't want to deal with it, right?
Right. And I also don't want to deal with this, because I got enough going on over here with people being, you know, patients. And that's something that I work with now with the consulting coaching side for the doctors, is like, okay, let's make this so that you can do all of those things in a way that's manageable for you, but you do need to be engaging with your employees. You do need to be investing in them. Let's figure out how you check in, how that person best responds to you, you know, so that you can retain your employees, because a ton of people have a ton of turnover because of that kind of thing. So it's like, no, if you just change a couple things about how you're approaching this, it makes a huge difference. You're going to have a lot more employees.
We talked to one, you know, CEO, you know, owner once, and there was some conflict between individuals, and his response was, it doesn't concern me. It's just, you know, I look at it as hearsay or something. And I said, well,
it's going to concern you.
I said that the problem with that approach, and what he said is honestly probably more common. Yeah. You know, that I think a lot of, especially larger groups, there's a lot of staff. The problem with that is you're the owner. You have no one in charge of you. You can do whatever you want. The staff deals with you differently. Right. Oh, yeah. They won't pull the stuff with you. They'll pull with each other. Oh yeah. And I was just trying to explain that's a place of convenience for you that no one else in the organization has. So to take that stance is just really unfair to individuals who are complaining because they feel defeated, undervalued, they're not appreciated. And I know you don't mean that, but that's exactly where it leaves everyone else involved. Yeah. It's inconvenient for you. It's hell for me, but it's inconvenient for you. So we'll just go with that. And I was like, it's not going to work. You're going to get yourself in trouble. You have turnover. You're going to have continued conflict. So it is your problem. Yeah. Even, you know, like no matter what, if the kids are fighting in the backseat of the car, it's going to be your problem. It's your problem.
Like, absolutely. Yeah. And there's just so many, there's just little tweaks that need to be made. It's not even, you know, it's nothing huge. And I think people get worried about dealing with other people, but it's like, just set up your systems right and talk to people. You talk to patients all day long, talk to your staff. It's not that hard. But I think making a few little tweaks definitely helps with that kind of thing for sure.
Look, one big one is when we see challenges on the phones, one of the big solutions is having the doctors talk to the people managing the phones more frequently. Yeah. Right. Because then they get mad, like, well, they screwed up my schedule, and they did. I'm like, do you talk to them often? Right. No, that's the administrator's job. Like, I agree, but is it working? Right. And there's something about just being engaged in helping them understand what your needs are. Yeah. And showing them you care. Yep. They tend to make your problem their problem a little better. Yeah. When you've spent some time, so it is worth it. I think trying to say I just want to go to clinic and be out. Look, that's the dream. Great. And if you get a good administrator,
you'll get there eventually.
But you've got to grow into that. Yeah. You know, there will be a point. And even then it's unlikely because healthcare is weird. It's the only industry I'm aware of that highest trained, highest paid people working next to people with lower education, lower pay, and you're shoulder to shoulder. So the relationship is forced on you, whether you want it or not. Right. So if you just say, I just want nothing to do with it. And it's tough.
They're not going to stick around. And, you know, I think too, like empowering the employees one is going to be knowing yourself and knowing what is it I actually need out of this relationship, right? So like me and my front desk people, you know, they've been with me for a long time. I know full well that I should not be the one to go in there and make an appointment. Reason being, I book it so wrong. And I don't look at the same things that they do. I'm like, oh yeah, I could totally fit this in then. It'll be fine. And then the day comes and I'm like, who did that? And they're like, you literally did that. And I'm like, yeah, don't let me touch that schedule. That's a bad idea. So, you know, I know there's certain things that I like to have on my schedule. So I'm like, I don't want a new patient at my first appointment or, my first appointment right after lunch. And I don't want a new patient as the last one, because inevitably they come in, then they start their paperwork. My whole day is screwed. There's just certain things that it's like, okay, these are the important things to me that I make sure to communicate with them. And I'm like, the rest of this is yours. Like, you do this how you want. And if you find something that's like, this is inefficient and this is not working, come tell me, because I don't know. You're doing this job. You tell me how it's going to work the best. And I think that empowerment for them is huge. There's a sense of autonomy. I'm not crawling down their neck. I don't have to.
And they feel safe enough to actually do it, right?
Yeah, they feel safe enough to do it. And then, I come in and I look at it sometimes and I'm like, ugh. And they're like, you said you wanted that many appointments. And I'm like, I know, I'll own it, and I walk away, So, so yeah, it makes for a much better experience for employees. So yeah, there was a lot of growth happening with like learning how to manage employees and how to, I think kind of communicate what I wanted, what I needed as the doctor to make things flow well, while still empowering them to, want to be invested in the company as a whole. So that was probably a big focus.
We hear so often the frustration around that.
Yeah.
I think the way you handled it was putting onus on yourself to be a better manager, to be a better leader. And that's a huge difference. I mean, that's a credit I give to you, right? There's nothing, you just had that in you, and then we're able to come in and help coach you around that.
Yeah.
That is a real problem for a lot of doctors who will tell you themselves, I didn't learn how to be a manager. I didn't get business training.
Nope.
So this is where the need is. I think you have to start to know where you're at in the growth process, where you are with your people, and whether you want it or not, you do have responsibility to be engaged and to understand the needs of these individuals. And yeah, that's the hard part. This is so that we've kind of led into this third phase. You're busy, you're managing your team, you're handling the growth.
Yep.
You're remaining antsy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because you're antsy.
Always antsy.
But that's you have to have that, right? You want more. You realize you're growing or dying. Right? Yeah. There's no standing still.
Yeah.
Conversation I had with you that I've had many times. I've had it with myself.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like you're wading through cement.
Oh yeah, that's business.
That means it's working, right?
Right.
It never goes as fast as you want.
No.
And I swear we have this conversation daily, because we all want, like, you just want to push a button and go, and and it just feels like it isn't working sometimes, but it is. And you can measure. That's the important thing of the tracking and the measuring, is even though you want to say like, man, I want this stress off my shoulders. I want the revenue to show this or that. I want my team just to do what they're supposed to do.
Yep.
Leave me alone. I want the cases. I want, I'm tired of these that are just bogging on me. That if you're not doing that, if you don't hit that point, you're probably not actually growing at all.
No.
So
yeah, you're probably just kind of sitting.
Yeah.
Which there's a level of comfort there too, right? I mean, I think we all go through these little kind of growth and plateau phases, and it's, I think you're really, I feel like you really know you're like succeeding in the business side of things when you initially, like, you go through the growth, it's super painful, and you get to your plateau and you're like, oh, thank God. Everything's settling out, right? And then you realize you got to grow again. And it's like, it's the painful, oh, we got to have to do this. Okay, we're going to do it. And it's going to be painful. And then you get to a place where you're like, if you hit the plateau, which is where I'm at now, I'm like, okay, what's next? Like, if we're not growing, we're dying. I look forward to those painful growth periods. Sometimes not a great thing, not a good mentality to be in, but it helps, it helps launch things for sure.
And as you grow and have more resources, you can hire more help to make those growth phases less painful.
Yeah.
So that's the nice part.
Yeah.
So you're in this third phase. Now we're planning for an associate.
Yep.
I mean, the volume's there. You were a little bit cautious and hesitant, naturally.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I was telling you all the signs are there. It's coming whether you want it or not.
Yeah. When you're booked 4 months out, that's a little, that's a bit of a problem.
Remember? Yeah. Because that's a hit to brand, right? If you're good, but I can't get in, I'll just go somewhere else.
And that's what they were doing.
That might be good too.
Yeah.
Right. So you had to do it. You had to look at expansion.
Yeah.
And while that's all coming up, you had a great idea, right? That you said, hey, I could launch a nail salon.
Yep.
And we talked about that,
Yep.
right? And then new
Yeah.
brand, new website, new campaign. It was a great idea. You implemented it the right way. We helped you, get the brand together and some
Mm-hmm.
of the logistics. We got the
Mm-hmm.
software in place.
Yep.
Um, but I think the what I like about that being implemented, and I'll have you talk about what you did and why with the specifics.
Yeah.
What I like about that is that the growth that was occurring, just this, the clouds opened up and there's
Yeah.
this great idea that was so obvious,
Yeah.
and it kind of wrote itself, but
Yep.
you knew how to act on it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me about that, because I was really impressed with that.
Yeah, that was kind of born of, I mean, I don't know, how much like you or your wife know about like the nail salon industry. Not very regulated, apparently.
Yeah.
And like I love getting pedicures, I always have, but I also, I come from a place where like I pay a lot of attention to foot health. That's literally what I do. And I'm seeing people pull, tools out of their pocket. I'm going, God, please don't give me a staph infection. Like it's just, it was getting to a place where I was like, this is really terrible. And I see a lot of patients that are, immunocompromised. A lot of them have diabetes, like that it's not safe for them to go get a pedicure. And I had never recommended that they be able to do that. And I was like, why do we not all have nail spas in our office? And this was actually something I had thought about when I was in residency. And so this has been a long time percolating in the back of my head. And I decided to I hadn't seen anybody with it. So I was like, I'm just going to wait and see. Maybe there's a reason nobody tries it. Maybe private practice is just like so overwhelming that I'm not going to have enough time to think. Right. Nope. It is literally because I think people get overwhelmed with our lack of business education on like the systems, and we're chronically running around putting out fires. So I had hit a place with my practice where I wasn't the one having to put out fires anymore. I had spent time with you guys training up my, fire extinguisher so that she could deal with those things. And at that point, it was like, oh no, I totally can pull this off. It's just another business, right? So I went through and I, talked with my attorneys, talked with my CPA. It had to be an entirely separate business. And that was one of the big legal things if I was going to have it in my office space. So I essentially have a rental agreement with myself that like that business is renting out to my practice. And then, we have a whole bunch of different agreements. That's all on paper. But honestly, like the lead up, now that we had done the practice, it was like, I think it took me probably a good 9 or 10 months for the practice to like be profitable, right? Where like I made my first amount of money off of it and it wasn't just like in the hole, right? And so this was like, okay, I know there's a need for it. I started kind of polling my patients like, hey, hypothetically, if I started this, what would you think? And they were like, I would be there in a heartbeat. So I was getting overwhelming, like good reactions. Now that doesn't mean everybody's going to come in and actually book as soon as you open the doors, right? But that overall it's being met with like a good market response. So when I moved into my current space, I purposely wanted to build it out to have that available and up and running. So I think like 3 or 4 months ahead of time, you and I started talking about like what the strategy was going to be, like what was the brand going to be about. And it was like medically safe and medically sterile, manicures and pedicures. What kind of things did I want to offer for services? We talked about, packaging those services, pricing those services. And this was all stuff that was new to me because in a practice, if you're insurance based, like you're not thinking about packages. You literally bill the insurance, they pay you hopefully like 4 to 6 weeks later. And then, that's how you make your income. This was a whole like, okay, what are other places in the area doing? Is what I'm doing differently make it worth that additional, money that we're going to charge? What kind of market do we want to be in? Are we going to play the convenience game? Are we going to play the quality game? Are we going to, play the price game? And I wanted to play
about if you're doing fingers and toes, right?
Yeah, right. Are you just going to stick with toes? Yeah. Or you're going to offer fingers too?
Yeah, exactly.
And it was like, well, I don't think anybody's going to want to just come in for toes if they can't get their manicure at the same time. So we did both,
Yeah, I remember that conversation.
Yeah, and I really decided I wanted to go more for quality. Like this was the brand was about quality. We were going to go for quality pricing, which is a good, $20 to $30 higher than the normal places you could just walk into anytime. Ours was going to be appointment only because I only had the one room and 2 chairs. So it was like, all right, we're already going to be limited. So you and I really came up with a good kind of lead up strategy for marketing for this. Where is it going to be best marketed? And I think we went a little, I mean, we did Google ads, but I think we went a little more social media with that kind of a business than the
both. Yeah,
practice.
we've run both those channels for paid ads.
Yeah.
I think to take a step back to what you were saying a moment ago, what was different for you coming from insurance world was understanding that what other people charging, but what do I need to charge?
Yeah.
And I have a say in my price. Like, that's weird, right?
Yeah. Right. Like, I get to set that. Oh God. Like, like, what if people tell me it's too much? Like, I got all worried about it.
But back to my point earlier, where, like I said, there's a formula that works, right?
Yeah.
When you know your numbers, when you know business administration, like, you can walk into a bakery tomorrow and start to make sense of it with no real background, because you start to understand how business works.
Yep.
And that's what we were, like you said, that was a little bit of a newer discussion from where you were coming. But that was easy to kind of get through, right? So look, let's look at your pricing. Let's look at what the labor is going to be, the rent, any of this stuff. This is where you have to be. And I think that planning, I mean, you hit the ground running with that. That
was profitable in 3 months. That was like, boom.
It was well planned, well executed, without hesitation. You understood your market, the opportunity. We made sure the numbers looked right. I mean, it was just very successful.
Yeah. It was smooth. And it was essentially the same approach that we had taken to the practice. So I was just thrilled you guys were down to do something that wasn't a medical practice. I was like, hey, so hypothetically, would you be willing to try this? So, but yeah, it was the same formula, and it worked great, and it got there even quicker, I think, because we started it a little bit sooner. So yeah, it was great.
So while that's going on, this is funny because you're still running your practice.
Oh yeah.
And we're having the same level of conversation about this other thing, right? But we're having the same in-depth discussion about an associate.
Yep.
Which you were very, very nervous about. But I said, this is what you have to do, and here's what it's going to look like. Mm-hmm. So you started planning for it and putting feelers out.
Yep.
And I remember we talked about your marketing strategy includes your recruiting efforts, right? So we're going to try to attract people too. When we do this marketing, and we have to help them understand that we can build a practice that they want,
right?
And you can bring people in, and then we're talking about under what structure they come in and everything else, all the mechanics. But the hard part is, like, you're a little smaller market, right? There's people that are gonna want to be there, and others who won't.
Yep.
But I wasn't worried about that. I think you're a little more worried about that. For me personally, I was like, hey, Pacific Northwest is a beautiful place. You just got to find the one person, and then the next one, eventually people that want to be there, and you will.
Yeah.
And so, tell me about that part for you. Like,
I mean, I think I went through 2 or 3 where it was like, we got close, you guys jumped on, one of the virtual interviews with me so that we could be like, just because I wanted that other opinion too on, like, do you think this person's going to be self-starter enough? Because that's one of the big things that we do need in private practice. Like, even if I'm handing you the patients, like, if somebody's coming in to private practice with the employee mentality, that doesn't always work, because you just can't do that. Like, you do have to take some ownership in private practice, even if you are employed by someone else. So that's honestly probably the part I was the most nervous about. I knew I could find somebody that would be a good fit personality wise for my team. That was not a concern for me, because I'd been essentially really hiring based on personality most of the time. Because most of the things, for the front desk, the back office, like, those are skills I can train you. So I was pretty in tune with hiring for, like, how well are you going to fit in? Absolutely. So I knew I could do that part, but like, I had no idea how to tell if somebody was going to, really want to be there, in terms of putting in the effort and stuff. So it was really helpful to have you guys on some of those interviews.
And what we talked about, right, is getting to the core, because everybody wants to be pleasant and nice, right?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
We have to cut to the core of what does success look like for them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Can you meet that?
Yep.
Is it reasonable?
Yep.
I talked to a few different people in this process with you. I think even one, just me directly, talking to them.
Yep.
Where we spoke beforehand. And that's the one thing that I look for is, they may be an awesome person. They may be a great doctor. Do they want to be here? Are they going to want to be not just at your practice, but actually, are they going to be happy in that area? Is that a
Right.
place that they want to plant some roots? Right. So,
Right.
yeah. And then looking at the numbers and
Mm-hmm.
making sure that we could project what we could do for them off of actual data.
Yep.
So we could live up to it.
Yep.
And if you do that well, it's a very inspiring conversation,
Mm-hmm.
to the person who's looking to maybe join,
Yeah.
that you have things in order, you know what you're doing, your tracking's there, and you're taking the time to understand what success looks like, what kind of practice they want, and then making sure that you're giving them the confidence that you can definitely do that for them. Because it's a, you know, as much of a risk as it is for you, I've always been sensitive to the fact that for the employee side, the associate side, it's a bigger
risk for them.
It's and probably more impacting them than you, on the grand scheme, right?
Right.
Which is not good for you either if things don't go well.
No,
so, but
it's expensive if this employee doesn't go well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We all want this to work. So there's no reason to not, you know, speak openly and you know, be really honest about what you need and be respectful, but you can be really direct about what do you need, you know, and then we wrote it down on a single piece of paper with bullet points instead of worrying about contracts and stuff. We just said, let's just map out what success looks like. And then once that's done, then we can hand it to the attorneys and make it scary. But,
right. And then everybody can read through it, put it in legalese that nobody understands and sign it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's pretty much how it goes. So
no, but it was very cool to see, because again, your instincts and your business acumen are very strong. But there were just things where you were like, man, there's things I don't know. I haven't been down this path. Right. Yeah. So when I was like, trust me, this is what you're going to do and why, we did that, right? You did that. And then, I think you landed a great candidate who, how long have they been on now? Tell me about that.
I mean, he's been on here for over a year. Well, let's see, a year and 3 months. But you know, as it turned out, it was somebody that I knew well to begin with. And like our goals at the time kind of aligned. You know, we were coming from different practice backgrounds at the time. So he had come from a very traditional hospital based, you know, didn't get a whole lot of say in what he was seeing and what he was doing. And, you know, I'm over here with private practice. Like, I've decided I no longer want to do this and I want to focus on this every like 4 months. And you guys were, you know, kind enough to go along with most of it. So, you know, I was used to having a lot more control and say in the type of patients I wanted to see at that point, and, you know, designing my schedule. And really, I knew it was possible to make a practice what I wanted. And I'm over here trying to, you know, like portray the fact that like, no, you get to do that too. Like, I'm fine with that. What do you want to see? Like, and I think it was so foreign to him too, that, you know, it took a little longer for us to get up and, you know, really profitable and running because of that mentality shift. And, you know, I've been doing this almost 10 years now. So for me, I'm like, what do you mean? And, I remember at one point when he was first getting started, he was like, you know, okay, well, who do I talk to? Who decides the schedule? And I kind of was like, I think I was really confused by what he was asking. And I was at dinner with his significant other and my husband. And I was like, well, I mean, I guess technically the office manager, like I literally thought he was talking about who determines the schedule for like the employees, right? Or like who actually makes the appointments. And I was like, well, like the office manager and the employees do. And his significant other was like, oh, you got to make friends with her. And my husband was the one later, he was like, hey, I don't know if you caught this, but I think they're thinking that like he doesn't have a say in his schedule and that like the office manager is going to be deciding that. And I was like, is that what that was about? So like I came in and I was like, hey, you do your schedule. Do you know that? And he was like, no, I totally thought that wasn't how that was going. And I was like, oh my God. Okay, no, like you tell them when you want to work. Like it's fine, you know, work 3 days, 4 days, whatever you want to do. And then like, they will fill it with appointments. And he was like, this is so weird. And I was like, is this not how this works? So like, we were really coming from two totally different places. And thankfully we get along amazingly. He's great at what he does. But like you said, that's the kind of stuff that like, I don't know how to help shift somebody else's mentality with that. You know, like this is stuff I'm learning for the first time too. This is a different level of leadership that I have not had to do yet. I can handle the employee stuff now like it's nothing, but
Right.
this is new. This is a different level of employee. So, yeah, it's been an experience. It's been really great for both of us. And we're still both really happy that he's here. But, yeah, it's,
Remember,
it's a shift.
and something I'll share just because it's so common. And in my own business, looking back, same thing, completely different business, was when you're looking at this expense, this another doctor coming in.
Yeah.
And you're like, how am I going to pay for that? Like, are you kidding me?
Right. Where's somebody coming from? Yeah.
And then I'm over here like all calm about like, yeah, don't worry.
It'll be fine. And I'm like, it's not going to be fine.
And you're like, it's not going to be fine. What are you talking about? Yeah, you write the check. Like, and so, but the way that we went about that, and now we're talking about further growth, is the metrics. The metrics
ready to hire the next one. Let's do this.
but how? I mean, if you look back, remember the metrics. I'm like a robot.
Yeah,
being like, this is what it is.
It is.
It works.
It is.
And that is the beauty. I feel such confidence in any business model if I can get those numbers in front of me.
Yeah.
Once you see it, you see it, right?
Yep.
It's just like, it's there. It is. It's that. It's this, and you're good.
Yeah.
And that you had to get over that hump, and everyone does. I had to do it when I grew my business. Tell me about that anxiety. What would you share?
Yeah, that was, I mean, it was like I logically knew you were right, and I was looking at the same numbers, but I was just like, I don't see how this is going to work, because I'm looking at like what I'm taking home every month, and and I mean, we were tracking KPIs, like we were looking at all of these things, and all the numbers pointed, this was like winter of 22. Yeah. And, he signed after like early January, after the holidays. And looking at the numbers at that point, it was like, oh yeah, no, there's no reason that, I can't take this person on at what we had decided at, like this worked, Then I got restless, and, this is a full disclosure. I decided I was going to drop Medicare in April of that. And the thing was, like, looking at the numbers, and we went through this a lot too. Like, I was able to consult with you a lot on this, which was helpful. Like, looking at the numbers, I was spending like 70 to 80% of my time on like 15 to 20% of my income. And as we know, in any business, like, that doesn't make sense. Like, can I focus on the 20% of patients that are bringing in 80% of my income? And the decision was, go for it. And I, checked in with the associate. I was like, hey, this is what I'm planning on doing, because the reimbursement where we're at is terrible, and it's not going to change anytime soon. Are you okay if I go ahead and do this? And he was like, yeah, if it works, it works. Great. Go for it. And I did. And for the first 2 or 3 months, it was great. It went really well. I was still booked up. We were still bringing in enough new patients. It was fine. But my area is, and this is something that I always, now in hindsight, tell people that I work with, that I consult for, is really pay attention to who the employers are in the area, because we've got one major employer where I'm at that's all commercial insurance, because it's a government type of a contracted thing. And then we have a ton of retirees that are all on Medicare. And about 4 months after I made that decision, the government employer decided they weren't going to do any more new work. They weren't bringing in any new Navy. And they basically outsourced everything to all these other shipyards until like 2029. And so I'm suddenly without all of those commercial insurance patients. And you and I had to take a whole different strategy of getting people in the door. And now basically the majority of what's in the area is retirees who are on the one insurance that I no longer take. So there was, but there's just some stuff you can't control. You know what I mean? Like, I can't control that. So that also made it a little bit harder of a ramp up for the associate. We eventually decided to go ahead and contract him with Medicare, because we found out that I could be non-contracted because I had opted out, but he could still be contracted under my business. Right. So we definitely have filled his schedule that way. And then you and I just work on making sure that we're marketing, the type of patients and the type of services that, he and I really want to be doing to try to bring that into the practice. And I think that pivot has been really important. I wish I didn't have to make it. I still don't think that dropping them was the worst thing for me. I mean, I don't regret doing it, because it has really changed the quality of how I practice. But from a, from a cash flow revenue standpoint, when you're bringing in an associate, probably not the best move to do them both at the same time. In hindsight.
I mean, I generally, yeah, I mean, we come across this conversation in a variety of forums, even just dropping insurances completely.
Yeah, in general. Yeah.
I mean, I think be very careful with it for a lot of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But we're in a country where the insurance thing is what we have to deal with, and
Yeah.
To cut it off in any form is more often problematic than not.
Yeah.
I see a lot of folks, yeah, they might go to a weekend seminar and then they come back and they're like, I'm going to do this thing. And I'm like, did you see the guy's books? Did you
Right.
like
Did he show you his books though?
Yeah. I was like,
Yeah.
how is, and then, and is he in a market that matches yours? It's like, what's the difference? Like, can this be applied? And should it be, I'm just cutting it off right here and right now.
Right.
So I do think you need to be very careful with it, because in reality, this is still what patients want.
Yeah.
Certain specialties, we've seen some specialties that are going cash pay.
Well, sure.
And
dentists.
Work.
I mean, yeah, they weren't taking much insurance anyways,
Yeah. And then other specialties, not a chance. Like, it's just not something the market's going to accept.
No.
So,
no.
I mean, I think you really thought through your numbers. I'm always hesitant about that move.
Yeah.
I think your numbers were right. Like you said, there's an unforeseen circumstance.
Yeah.
That came.
Yeah. It really was working for a while until it didn't. And I think probably until it didn't. And that's how it always works, right? Like you're right until you're not. And then all of a sudden you're not. And you either get to panic or you get to go, well, crud, what do I do now? And you pivot what you were doing. And we leaned harder into a little bit more of the, cash service stuff that nobody else is offering. My answer to that was to do more niche, services. And that has worked. That's worked really beautifully. I've also changed up my schedule so that I'm doing like longer 3 days a week. And then I spend the other 2 days a week doing my, my coaching for clients and, doing the business side of stuff. So, I've still managed to create the practice I want, despite having a pretty major hiccup. Like that was, between that and the whole like Change Healthcare shutting down revenue for a few months, like, there's been some stuff, but it's always turned out like.
But that's not right. Luck favors the prepared. The reason you came out of each of these little hiccups, which any business goes through, it's nothing, happen. Right? It's the fact that you identified the stuff early. You had eyes on what's going on.
Yeah.
And you weren't afraid to roll up your sleeves and accept the reality and do what's needed to keep moving forward.
Yep.
So again, a thing that doesn't always happen. Sometimes someone's like, oh, this thing got changed on me. It wasn't part of the plan. And they don't see it coming. They don't act on it. They're not willing to roll up their sleeves. Those are the problems. So I think credit to you is, this is just business. I mean, it's how it's going to go. It's always going to go. No matter what you do next, there'll be some other bump in the road, and you'll just have to deal with that as well.
Yep.
But with more resources over time, you can hire more help. It just, you can take the bite off a little bit.
Yep.
But that's a tip I'll give to anyone is, I don't care what business you're going to hit something you didn't plan on. And if you're not willing to adjust, it probably won't work out. Statistically, it doesn't. So
no. And I think too, like one of the ways you can be more prepared for that is actually like picking that right team around you. Right. So, having you guys that I knew I could contact and be like, okay, we need a completely different marketing strategy because this just didn't work. Or, having my CPA and my bookkeeper, really good, having a really great, attorney that's able to, help me if I'm wondering about, can I do this? Can I not do this? Yeah. I think having that team around you, that's that preparation part so that when the things go wrong, you're not in it alone. Like you get to call people and be like, what do you think? Because you've worked with them enough that you trust their expertise, you trust their opinion, it becomes more of a team sport. I think at that point.
And let's touch on this because yes, you have a good team, but it's not like you just got lucky. I mean, we met, we got along, it was great. You kissed a few frogs, right? Like I've got a really good team, but it's so hard to build that. And you have to look, you have to, don't get emotionally attached to people just because
Nope.
you like them, right? They have to be able to do their part.
Yep.
But on the flip side, you're also easy to work with, which makes smart, talented people want to work with you, right?
Sure. Yeah, I see what you're
And
saying.
that's tough because I have a way of doing business, and I hire
Yeah.
vendors, and there's times, and I mean, especially with the workforce today versus, it's weird to think I've been
It's
in the
changed.
professional world for
Yeah.
20 years,
Yeah.
Probably longer, actually, more than 20 years.
Right. Makes you feel old.
And I'm like, man, no one has work ethic today. I feel
It's
like an old
just
man,
different. It's
but
just
it is
different.
extremely different. And I
Yeah.
have to learn what that is for the younger group. Like
Yeah.
what motivates them. And there's times when I have to go in and go, okay, like this person, this girl, this guy, they're smart, they're capable. And if I can get the best out of them,
Right.
it's going to be to my advantage.
Yep.
Now I need their respect. I need them to respect my business and my brand,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm probably going to have to be a good customer,
Yeah.
and easy to work with too. So just because I'm holding the cash and they want the cash doesn't always mean I just get to do whatever I want, however I want. And that is where a lot of groups go wrong when they're looking for help, when they hire internally and they hire consultants, they hire marketing agencies. They're not good customers, and it's hard to get it done if it's not some form of partnership.
Yeah.
And I think that's where working with you, I've noticed you work well with others. You're good at you're good at being friends with people, but
and
keep it professional too.
I think the big thing, honestly, is like admitting what you don't know, right? Yes, I mean, one of the big things with medical school is that you're literally putting your mouth up to a fire hydrant and turning it on full blast. Like the amount of information, and they make that analogy all the time, and it's totally true.
Yeah.
Like I never thought I would take that many credits at one time. I didn't think it was physically possible. I still don't. But you get into this place where you're like, I have retained so much information that I can do all the things, and you feel a little bit unstoppable. And I love that. I love that mentality of like being willing to learn about all of those things. However, where people get stuck is that they can't admit that I went to medical school. I didn't take courses in bookkeeping. I have no experience in marketing. I'm not a CPA. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a biller. Like, I didn't go to school for those things. There are people that literally went to school for these things. Like, let them do their job, and that's... I think if you can put a certain amount of trust, educate yourself in having a general knowledge of what should be happening so that you make sure that you're not getting taken advantage of, right? And that goes for every single field.
Yes.
But like, let the experts do what they're going to do. They're better at it and they do it for a living. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that you're somehow less of a person or dumb or can't figure it out. Like, oh, I'm a doctor, I should be able to do that. No, you shouldn't. Like, you should be able to treat patients. That's literally your job. Go do your job. Leave the rest of it to other people that are better at it, because they are. And that's okay. I get really big on clients for that. Like, I'm like, just admit what we're good at and what we're not. It's first starting point.
And that's the leadership coaching. We've done a lot of practice assessments, right? Some with big teams, and we've done this at universities. We've done it for big companies, small companies.
Yeah.
More often than not, we can pretty much predict. Within a 5-minute conversation, we've got a pretty good sense.
Yeah.
But that we have to go through the process for the leadership. And what we usually find is in that leadership coaching is it really is, it all starts at the top. So we find, the lack of structure or discipline, and it starts up here, but then it rolls downhill. And they're upset by these things that you can start to point out that actually they're responsible for creating. Right. And they're mad at their staff for following suit. Yes. Is what it really is.
Yes.
And usually the staff is like, we're trying everything we can to keep them on track.
Yes.
And can you help us?
Mutual frustration.
But think about it. As in private practice, and this is, your discipline has been very good, and a lot of doctors are good at this, some aren't. We see things like people not coming in to clinic on time. Patients are sitting there for 2 hours. We've seen all kinds of stuff. And if you were in an employment situation, those things couldn't happen, right? You don't have those controls. You're the boss.
Right.
And that's a problem, because those things that you would be implemented if you're an employee or there for some other reason. So you have to find that discipline
Yeah.
for yourself.
Yep.
And then realize that, yes, I'm in charge. I can do what I want, but what you do, right?
It directly affects your staff.
They're going to learn it. They're going to do it too. Yeah. So,
yeah. Yep.
I mean, it's just, that's one of the biggest things we have a hard time. Excuse me. That's one of the biggest things I see practice owners have a hard time with is that discipline and the understanding of, I can do whatever I want, but should I? Like, what's the impact? Does it, how does this turn out? So finding that discipline, and this is where coming in and going, okay, I'm going to have a leadership coach, or I'm going to, hire a consultant to get my staff to be better on the phones, all these little things.
Yep.
Then you should absolutely, once they're in, you've vetted them and they know what they're doing. You assume that's why you hired them. You do need to follow that process and have that discipline, or it won't work.
It won't work.
And
you're wasting your money.
And that it's very hard too. Like, let me be clear. I understand why it's so easy to not do those things if you don't have to. It's why we work for ourselves. We don't want somebody telling us what to do.
I don't want somebody telling me what to do. Like, that's not a thing anymore. Yeah.
And yet you gotta find the discipline, and you're your own boss. And
Yep.
That's the hard part.
It is. I make that joke all the time. My husband, he was like, "Are you going to get that day off?" I'm like, "I don't know. I got to talk to the boss." And she is not great about those things. He's like, "That's literally you." I'm like, "Yep, sure is."
Yeah. Oh, I mean, for me, it was 5 years before I started like taking a breath, really. And my brother we were chatting. He goes, yeah, you told me 5 years you'd start chilling out a little bit. And he goes, it's been just over 5 years and you're starting to chill out.
He's like, so we're on schedule. Yeah.
Yeah. It was funny. I was like, I didn't think about that. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of truth to it. I mean, you got to hold yourself accountable. You got to have the discipline. You got to have a team of people that know what they're doing, and you have to be humble enough to listen to them.
Yes.
Even when you're the boss, you have to be able, okay, that they're right. I'm hearing it. I'm acting on it. So.
Yep. Yeah. I agree.
All right. So you've hired your associate.
Yeah.
You've stabilized. You mentioned the marketing pivot. It wasn't actually a huge pivot, right? We always stayed focused on brand. I'm so opposed to anything that I need a quick fix for leads right now, but at the expense of my brand. We see people, they'll work with lead generation agencies. Oof. And if you ever look at one of these, it's easy. Go look at their clients' websites, look at the domain authority score, and you realize, like, okay, they're getting all these leads, they say.
Yeah.
But everything over here is working against the image I want as a doctor, the image I want for practice. Yeah. So what we did for you is we just turned on another channel to bring volume in. Yep. And we ramped up the SEO a little more, and just worked within a budget, right? Because we're talking about what's the budget, what do we need to do to beat these guys who may have what we want, right? And I think it worked. It felt seamless because we had a strong foundation, and it was a conversation. What do we need to do? You told us what you need. We make the adjustment. Yep. And after a while, you didn't need us to manage your staff person. We took that budget and we put it into your ads. So, and it was, again, very smooth, very easy to get that implemented. And I think it went well. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was a pretty easy thing. That's the nice part I like about, like, when you finally get that, like, marketing system set up, is it's literally the turning on of the faucet or turning off. Like, are you too busy? Turn it off. Do you need more patients? Turn it on. Like, so, I mean, we definitely have built that,
Before we met, right, there was you just had some poor quality stuff. But I
mean, I was doing it myself. But then,
right.
Come on.
Well, you had some help externally, a couple things, right? So it wasn't part of a bigger strategy. No. And I don't care if you're a startup or if you're big. I from the very beginning, whatever I do now, I need to get results now. I'm not saying just wait, definitely. Yeah. But I need to make sure it also works in that 3 to 5 year vision. Yeah. And we started really small when you and I first met. It was a very small budget, and we did that very thing. And now it's tuned in and we can make adjustments pretty easily, but it's because you did that in the beginning where you set the foundation properly. Right. We haven't changed your design. Nope. We haven't changed your content. You've had to repay for things. That was my promise to you at the beginning. Doesn't mean we won't evolve or modify, but I'm not going to come back to you in 2 years and you need a whole new website. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
and you haven't.
No.
What we have is we built a new business and a new website. We built
Right.
ad campaigns. Now we're running
Yeah.
a really fun ad campaign for your laser.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're investing in fun creative and things that
Yeah.
might make folks chuckle, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
So
excited about
that,
those. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's the stuff that I would recommend. Think of it that way, no matter where
Mm-hmm.
you start, because if you're just getting, well, I'm just going to get a quick template right now. Your website should make you money.
Yeah.
Google is going to be so important to you, and if you aren't taking it serious, I think you're really hurting yourself, no matter where you're at in practice.
Yeah.
It's a necessary part of your growth, no matter what. So I think that ease for you it comes in the back of taking the proper steps, having the right foundation.
Yep.
Over time, and now, yeah, it is easy now.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah. Now,
but we've got
easy, right?
Yeah.
That depends on your definition, right? Like,
right. Yeah. But what it is now is it's like, hey, let's have a quick conversation. Oh yeah, that thing. Great.
Yeah.
I come back and now, look how quickly we're able to have these designs and these ads, and then and for you it is easy now because it's a just quick discussion.
Yep.
And you know what you're getting, and
Yep.
Yeah, that's what you want. That's what every business wants, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've got the associate on.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a viable marketing strategy that's allowed us to pivot.
Yep.
You've had a few staff headaches.
Oh, sure.
Nothing abnormal.
Nope.
But just, I mean, I think what you've landed now is you know what you need from your team. You know who they need to be, what they need to be doing. You've got a pretty good handle on stuff. So now, like with those wheels always turning.
Oh yeah.
now you've got more ideas. So now we're looking at the next thing, right? We're looking at expansion of your nail salon at some level.
Yep.
You're looking for, we've been talking since the beginning about bringing on more associates and growing that. And that may include new locations. So
maybe
tell me about, tell me, because nothing's in stone, right? But these are things now your brain is there.
Yep.
Because based on your need for growth, what the market will allow, with the opportunity, you'll be able to adjust in any one of those channels.
Yep.
And you need to at some level, right?
Yeah.
So it's even though we don't have a hard plan right now for any one of those things.
Nope.
You are planning for it, knowing that it's inevitable in some way that you will have to look at that.
At some point, we're going to have to do, like we've said, if you're not growing, you're dying. So like at some point we are going to have to change things up. And so, I mean, always looking for that like next associate. I think my big thing is, I keep ads out, I keep interviews going. It's just a matter of finding the right person, trying to time out when I think they'll be ready to come in, when we'll be busy enough to, make sense, right? By the numbers. The nail salon, I have found the biggest limiting factor for expanding that business is staffing. We're not in an area where we have a ton of nail spa techs that are certified techs. And my state's really, really strict with like who's allowed to do those types of services. So, I have other coaching clients that I coach that are across the country, and their state is not particular about it. Like basically anybody can do it. So like I've helped her get that up and going in her office, and it's killing it with growth because she doesn't have this limiting factor, right? So it's interesting to see, how these things can affect your expansion. But I mean, we did just hire a second nail tech. I'm now talking to my landlord about kicking myself out of this office so that I can make this into an additional spa room, because that just makes sense to make your square footage work as hard as it can. So I've already, told the associate doctor I'm kicking us out of our own office, and we're going to be scooting over to my office manager's office, and we're just going to shove a lot of people in there. I mean, there's different adjustments that I'm toying around with, looking at other locations. Those need to make sense in terms of the startup costs. Do you take over what somebody else is looking to retire out of, buying out their equipment? You're also buying their problems. And I've definitely been looking at other businesses to purchase, other locations. And I'll tell you, I have been shocked at everybody's got a different level of business that they do. Right. Right. So I'm looking at like some of these mom and pop nail salons, and like, I literally got handed expenses on the back of an envelope last week. I was like, we don't have QuickBooks. Okay. Like, it's not, like I realize everybody's, and they've done it that way for 13 years. Like, this isn't like they're new at it. This is just how they function. So, I think getting a realization of, the various levels that everybody is at, and getting to look through other people's financials and look at it with the eyes of, I want to purchase this, and then I want to make it, expanding on my own stuff, is definitely been a really interesting experience. And, you and I have talked about it, like, does it just make more sense to, like, kind of start from scratch? And in the case of a spa location, yeah, it probably does. I probably would do better, because the startup cost on that kind of a business is so much lower, and the overhead is a lot lower than a medical practice. Whereas, for a practice, if I took over another location, I'm pretty much going to want to purchase like what they have, because that's building that up from scratch. It takes a while, so yeah, it's been an interesting experience, but there's always new stuff. There's never a dull time, much to my husband's chagrin.
I think that's the only way it can be done.
Yeah, I would agree.
Honestly. I mean, you're either going to be building a business that will work for you, and then you'll earn the ability to relax.
Yep. Or
you're going to be more of like a freelancer.
Yeah, you're creating a job.
Owner operator.
Yep.
You're creating a job for yourself, and you'll never get out of that. And that's really what we hear more often than not, is that people aren't, they're stuck in it. They're not getting a business that works for them.
Yep. And those are my ideal.
So I think you have to do that.
Yeah, I was going to say, those are my ideal coaching clients, to be honest, is the ones where it's like, we've realized that we've basically made a really expensive job for ourselves, and they want to hit that business ownership role. Like, how do we build your team? How do we get your systems in place? How do we make this so you can be the business owner? Because, like, when I leave for the last half of the week, I'm off 4 days a week. It's ideal. I don't get calls. Like, they're handling it. I have another doctor here who's handling it. So that's that level that I help my coaching clients get to now, is it's like, no, this can be done. But yeah, if you're just making a big job for yourself, that's fine. But it's not as fulfilling. You can't buy your time back that way. So.
Yeah. Well, let's do this. We'll wrap up here with some tips. Just a quick bullet point list, some overview of some takeaways from what we talked about today for people that are newer in practice, even further along. I mean, these are the same things I would educate administrators, practice owners,
whatever stage.
So So from this discussion, and just in general, as a business consultant, practice consultant, marketing consultant, accept the reality of owning a business. It's hard. Yeah. It's supposed to be hard.
Yep.
It's going to continue to be hard.
Yep.
If you don't like that, it's okay to not be self-employed.
Right.
That you can get a job, you can have a great job, make a great living, without taking all of these things on. And those of us that want to own a business and deal with all the stress and everything that goes with it, maybe something wrong with us. I mean, it's a lot. It's crazy. It's risky. So I think you get
to choose your hard, though. That's the key thing with entrepreneurship. You get to choose your hard. So
you get to choose it, but whatever it is, it's going to be hard.
It's going to be hard.
And as you grow, you get to limit how much of that it's going to be.
Yeah.
But I always want people to understand the part that it's not supposed to be easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it.
Absolutely.
Cliche, but that's one of the first things. And then you touched on this earlier. Understand your skills and limitations. Mm-hmm. Understand what you're good at.
Yep.
And then pick the right team for you.
Oh God, yeah.
Right.
Please do.
And as soon as possible.
Yes.
The longer you wait,
quickly as you can.
You do want to invest in your brand from day one, and you want to own everything. Don't just buy leads where the traffic is going somewhere else. Understand that traffic is very valuable to you and your brand growth and becoming a name in your community.
Yep.
And then on the business operation side, educate yourself. You don't have to be the jack of all trades, but you do need to understand how to manage people that you hire, relationships that you contract. You have to know how to manage them so that you can be sure they're taking care of you the way they're supposed to.
Yep. Yep. And I think if you want to be the business owner, educating yourself is just such a huge thing.
Yeah,
I literally
absolutely.
started listening to, I got myself an Audible subscription, and I drive an hour into the office. I started listening to books on business, books on marketing, books like, I have an entire library of books now that I, was going through like 5, 6, 7 a month. Use your time, educate yourself that way.
Yep. And you can't save your way to growth,
No.
which is a big one that, again, it's very hard, and realize whether you have capital that you saved, you got investors, you're taking loans, it costs money to do the stuff you want to do, because the people you're competing with either A, have already done that and made that investment, or B, they've grown to a point where they have the budget and the resources to do this thing that you want to do. So to think that you won't have to put time investment and financial investment into that is extremely unrealistic. And we do run into that a lot, where people are thinking, well, if I can just prove it works, then I'll put more money in. It's like, it's kind of backward.
Right. Right.
You have to have the appropriate investment. There's a buy-in. Marketing, business operations, staff. I stick to the idea that marketing and payroll are a percentage, not a fixed cost. Yeah. And if you're starting from zero, you're like, well, what's a percentage of zero? Actually, what it is what do I want to be in a year, 3 years? When my business matures, what does that revenue look like? And that is your financial investment or time if you can do it yourself. But if you cut corners in those areas, you're not going to see the results you want. Yeah. And that's, I'd say it's a pretty absolute fact. Yep. I've seen in business. So
plan for where you're going to be, not where you're at.
Absolutely. As you're growing, HR becomes your focus.
Oh God.
A lot more than people think of. I don't think they understand that. It's inevitable until you'll get to a point where you have an administrator or a manager who can take that on for you, but they will grow into that based on what you do or don't do.
Yep. So, and if they leave, you're going to go back to doing it.
It goes back to you. Yeah.
It literally is always going to come down to you. You better be comfortable with it and ready to go.
Or a lot of times people become real good with HR after something goes wrong.
Yeah.
There's a lawsuit or something else. It's better to do that up front and realize that this is inevitably you're going to be babysitting adults, for lack of a better term. You're right, and you're going to be like, do I really have to tell an adult this? Yes, you do. 100%.
100% of the time.
That is your job.
And it's okay. That is now your job.
It's a job. You're either growing or dying.
Yeah.
Right. And no matter what, at any stage, there's no standing still. You may feel like you're fine. And we've seen that, people that were fine for 10 years. And then one thing changed and they were almost out of business in a minute. You have to always be afraid of the boogeyman. In my world, I'm always worried about what's next. That's why I live by KPIs and front end metrics. So even when things look fine here, but I'm looking at this other thing going, oh, if I don't pay attention to that, it will be a thing eventually. So strongly recommend understanding how to look at your business. On the big picture, we all know the money and other stuff, but it's that day-to-day granular stuff that I think really lets you understand how you're performing. So always assessing risk. And planning for what's next.
You can't just go off of what you've been doing. It's never going to work. Like it'll work for a while.
Change.
False sense of security, and it'll work for a while, but it will change. Like what are the two things? Oh, I guess it's death and taxes, but I was thinking the other thing that never never changes is change. Like it's always going to happen. You're never gonna not change. So might as well be prepped for it.
And that next thing, this was very, very hard for newer businesses and even more mature ones. Don't get ahead of yourself.
Or for me, let's be real. Yeah, you don't want to get ahead of yourself because it gets exciting and And
what I mean by that is, I heard someone say something really good, which is like, if what you're doing now isn't working the way you want, that shiny object over there isn't going to be automatically better.
Oh my God.
Yes. Get really good at the thing that's making you money. Get really good at it. Stabilize it. Then expand. And take like your nail salon. You had an opportunity come up, but you were prepared for it? Because like you said, you've been thinking
Yeah.
for it for a while. The opportunity presented itself, and you did it when the time was right, and it went
Yeah.
really well.
Yep.
Had you tried to force that maybe 2 years earlier, it may have been a different discussion.
Yeah.
So don't get ahead of yourself. Like
Yep.
sit still,
Yep.
make sure that any change or pivot you're going to make is strategic. Don't get shiny object syndrome.
Oh
Don't.
my God. It's so bad.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
so bad.
It's
Like,
a
and
very
we all
common
do it.
issue.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
for
you know,
sure.
I hear all the time too, you know, the shiny object really comes in when, like, initially in your business, everything's growing, it's really exciting. Then things start to change and it gets hard. And you fall into what I've heard called like the valley of despair, where you're like, oh my God, this is terrible all the time. That everybody goes through that. You want to stick with it till you get up out the other side of
Yeah.
that. But that's where shiny object syndrome comes in. That's where you see what somebody else is doing over there. And it's like, oh, that looks a lot easier. Oh, she's making a lot of money with a nail spa. My practice is a mess, but I'm going to open a spa. And it's like, no, like my practice was basically on autopilot, barring a few things. I had the ability and the bandwidth to go over here and focus on that second business. And it wasn't a shiny object. It was a planned, thought out thing, like you were saying. But, you know, have I suffered from that? Like regularly, every Tuesday, I think of like a new business idea and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to go do this. And, you know, I have to rein myself in. So we all deal with it. Don't beat yourself up, but just don't take the bait. Please don't.
Well, I mean, think about it. If you can't, this thing that you're really good at in a long time isn't working, and it may be things that require you to get better.
Absolutely. It usually
right?
does.
So, so if I'm going to go start something else, to think that those problems won't follow you,
no, they're going to
also unrealistic.
Yeah,
They'll follow you. So.
They're going to follow you for sure.
Yeah. And then one of my final tips, because, you know, here we are, two consultants.
I know.
You know, right? I will strongly tell you, whether it's me or anyone else, like, don't take advice from anyone who hasn't done what you want to do.
Yep.
We see a lot of it. I'm sure, like, I still get the ads that a lot of doctors, administrators probably get from companies, making just outrageous promises. And when you hear them speak and you see, and you kind of look under the hood, like I said, take a look at who they're helping and where they're at. But you can tell pretty quickly what's lacking. I went through that when I became a marketer after being frustrated, firing 7 different agencies because people kept telling me they could help. It wasn't working. I brought it in house, and I realized I had to follow my own list. Right, I had to educate myself and understand how to manage a team who worked for me. And ultimately, I've really been a stickler about, if I'm going to hire you for this thing, I need evidence that you've done the thing I want you to do. I don't want to be the person that I'm paying you to learn on the job. I don't want to be figuring out on me.
Thanks.
No, not if I'm going to pay these prices, you know, the things. And I hire consultants for my team. We do training development. I'm in the same boat. We're talking to some group right now to level up some things we're doing. And, you know, some of the individuals we talk to, there's examples of one, they're very smart. They may or may not, they haven't proven to me that they have the direct experience. The bigger problem is, I don't think I would enjoy my time with them. Like we operate differently, and I don't feel like they're going to respect the way that we operate. They want it. It's a kind of an arrogance. Like, you're going to come in here and you're going to obey. Like, well, I'm sure you're very good at what you do, but I don't think that's going to jive.
It's not going to work for me.
And on the other hand, we found some others where it's like, it's a conversation where you feel like he's listening to me, you know? And by the way, within 2 minutes, I was like, he clearly knows what he's doing. Or she clearly knows what they're doing. That's a big thing that I really, like we talked about earlier. Some doctors say, well, this doctor over in Chicago is doing this thing. And I'm like, well, are they doing it? It seems like they're making their money doing some other stuff.
And that's, I definitely have seen that, you know, I've got a private practice. I'm only working so many days a week and I'm making 6 figures or I'm making, you know, God, I think he was saying like, you know, close to $1 million a year or whatever. And I'm like, well, how is that happening? You know? And it's like, no, when you realize how much I pay for coaching and then like how much everybody's paying, like, you know, that in some cases, it's may not actually be the practice that they're earning that kind of revenue with. In some cases, yes, absolutely. I've definitely met some, you know, he definitely was absolutely killing it in his private practice. But you know, you really have to kind of look at where all of that's coming from. Because I use coaching and I love it. I know I've made the biggest strides forward when I have worked with coaches and like mastermind groups. So I'm a firm believer in that. But I kind of felt the same way you did. It was like, um, did you really do what I'm trying to do or no? So this is a big reason why, I'm always kind of particular too about who I work with for coaching. Like those goals have to align. Because if you're wanting to do something, let's say you want to do a completely insurance-free practice, I don't know how to do that. Like, I could do the business coaching part of it in terms of, making sure you've got a good handle on your business, systems, employees. I'm really good with that stuff. I have zero idea how to run a practice that is on, cash only. So, I know other coaches that do that, and I'm going to refer them out to those people. But yeah, I think making sure you've got a good match is super important for that too.
All right. So we've
covered a bunch.
Covered a very real, yeah.
I always love talking to you, so it's like, oh, this flew right by.
I know, likewise. It's fun. Look, we've taken a very real look at your practice, and I think you've been really transparent. And I love these conversations. I mean, I imagine a lot of folks just want to know. I mean, we all like showcase our success, and you gotta have an air about you. Like, things are great, but they're not always great. Sometimes you're stressed out of your mind.
Oh God,
you're struggling through problems.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate these discussions where we're just like, let's just talk about it. But there's a way. There's a way to solve all those frustrations and fears. So, and with that, we can wrap this up, and might ask you. Yeah, tell people what you do and how you can help them, perhaps, with some.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me at this point is working with coach and other practice owners. I know when I started, I didn't even know what a P&L was, and my mother's a bookkeeper. Like, I had zero excuse to not know what that was, but I had to call her up and be like, "What is a P&L?" And she was like, "Oh my God," So so like we all start somewhere, and I've definitely through the last almost decade made the mistakes. I've had the bad and the good experiences. I've got this really well dialed in at this point, and I'm expanding to where I can help other people have this, because I am a firm believer that medicine needs to be kept in the hands of physicians. That's my own soapbox. So I really want to encourage doctors to have the autonomy, the independence, build that life that they really have worked so hard to have, and build a team around them that allows them to do that, and that they can actually enjoy what they're doing. We have way too high of a rate of burnout, and it doesn't need to happen. So, I coach people one-on-one. We usually meet twice a month, in between if we need to. And if anybody needs help leveling up or, even getting started, Lord knows, done a couple of startups at this point together. So, I'm here to help in whatever way people individually need. So probably the best way to reach out if anybody's interested in that is going to be at visionarypracticesolutions.com. My direct email is Dr. Sarah, DrSarah, VPS@gmail.com. So either of those ways, totally easy. We usually just kind of do an initial consult call free of charge, because, we need to get to know each other and see if it's even something that's going to work for both of us.
Okay. And as for our companies, Numana Digital, Numana Medical, we offer total medical marketing solutions and practice consulting solutions that actually complement well what Sarah's doing.
Yeah.
We it's funny. There's a lot of similarities, but I think there's things you're digging into as a practitioner. I'm not going to touch some of it.
Yeah.
Right.
There's the practice owner part of it.
Yeah. Right. And it's a nice compliment. But yeah, for us, we really want to help groups understand how to grow, position their brand.
Yeah.
A lot is focused on staff training and development, optimizing phones. Really, my background is in finance and operations. So, a lot of help with the financials, the KPI tracking, really looking at your business a certain way.
Yeah.
But look, our digital marketing and medical marketing teams are really good at helping tell your story and find the right audience and get the right people into the practice that you want and to grow your revenue the way that you want to grow your practice. So
that's why I've been with you guys as long as we have. Like, it works. I can attest.
Appreciate that. And it's always so much fun chatting with you. It's a pleasure. You can check us out at numanadigital.com. And I hope this was a very useful case study. These types of conversations I I really enjoy. And
Yeah.
I know people are often asking a lot of these questions. So we thought we'd share
Yep.
an open book here. What did we do? What's going
Full
on?
disclosure.
Yeah, totally. We appreciate your time. Sarah, it's always good seeing you.
You too.
I'm sure we'll do some more of these down the line.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for having me. We'll talk to you later.
Take care.